In this episode of HALTECH Heroes, we're here with this 2000 Mustang with a Gen 5 LT engine. Now this car is actually used in no-time racing, and it's built, owned, operated, and tuned by HALTECH USA's own General Manager, Eric Gash. So you've been with the company for a while now. How did you get your start in moving up to the general manager position that you're in today?
Yeah, I started with HALTECH back in 2007 when HALTECH USA transitioned from Southern California to Lexington. I worked in the sales and technical department and moved my way up into an office manager position and then took over as general manager in 2014. Okay. HALTECH USA has been growing as well as HALTECH around the world. It's awesome that we've been in business globally for 35 years and are continuing to grow in markets all around the world. Well, when we were racing the Corvette, I was racing with some friends of ours at the Conley Racing crew, Martin Conley and his crew. And I remember a comment that they made. We were trying to make the Corvettes work and trying to get them to 60 foot and trying to launch them at the racetrack. And I remember Martin or one of his guys said, "Look, man, we could help you a lot more if you built a Mustang."
So the Conley guys, now they're Ford guys, so Ford power plant, Ford chassis and all. Now you coming from Corvette background being GM engines, how did you marry that relationship together?
Yeah, so for me, building a Mustang was about the chassis. A lightweight chassis combined with a solid rear axle, a triangulated rear suspension. We know that chassis is going to work very well at the racetrack.
All right, so this motor was destined for your C7, but you decided, hey, let's stuff it in this Mustang, go have some fun. So why choose the LT over, let's say, a more traditional LS build?
Well, it's what I had. Like I said, I was building this engine for my C7. When I started this project, I virtually had a race seat that was scavenged from my C5 project. I had an LT engine at the machine shop, and I had a Garrett 88mm turbo sitting on the floor in my office.
And that's everything you need.
Well, that's the start of a race car right there. All I needed was a chassis that a friend of mine led me to, and yeah, we had the start of a race car. I weighed the options of using a traditional small block Chevy, the LT engine that I had being built at the machine shop at Estes Machine Shop, and also doing an LS swap. And I knew that we could make a lot of power with that LT power plant.
Okay. Now, the LT is different than the LS, especially in how it does its fueling. So how did you tackle the direct injection?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, we deleted the direct injection on this. We're running this engine on alcohol, on methanol. And we decided for this first iteration, for this first engine, that it would be easier to delete the direct injection, run it solely on port injection, and run it on alcohol.
We spoke a little bit about the turbo kit before. What size is on it now?
So this turbo is a Garrett GTX 5594.
Okay. And are you using a single O2 sensor? Are you running dual? How are you making that work?
I have, actually I've got two O2 sensors on it right now.
Okay.
We're doing some testing, so we're comparing one O2 to another, but generally you'll have one of the HALTECH NTK O2s connected directly to the R5.
And that's wired into the R5, okay. Now, in terms of your boost control, this is CO2 operated?
That's right, and you can see the CO2 solenoids mounted down on the front motor plate, and those control the CO2 pressure to the top of the wastegates.
And that's tied into the R5 as well?
Of course, yeah, the R5 is running the boost control. That's ramped based on race time, so whenever I let go of the trans brake, we start a timer, and the CO2 and the boost ramps up over time based on that.
That's awesome. You mentioned electric water pump before. What are you doing for a fuel pump?
Yeah, this car is running a Magna Fuel Outlaw 1000 mechanical pump.
And why are we running a mechanical pump, not an electric pump?
Well, it's on methanol, so it requires a high volume of fuel. It's hard to achieve with most electric pumps, so in this case we're running a mechanical pump. The pump's mounted in the rear of the car along with the fuel cell, but we use a cable drive system from Waterman that goes up to a belt drive from Motion Raceworks.
Okay, so because of the higher fuel volume, what are you doing for injectors and intake?
Yeah, so we've got a billet aluminum plasma mount intake out of Australia, a really nice piece, and mounted in that are a set of modified Siemens Deca injectors that have been modified by FID to flow more. So like most race cars, it's pretty sparse on the inside, but you'll notice the Nexus R5 front and center, along with the wiring harness. We also have a IC7 dash and a CAN keypad. Now all those devices communicate plug and play directly with a Nexus R5. On our CAN keypad, we have our start and stop switch. We have an override for the cooling system. We have our low beam headlights and our cabin lights. We also have our power window up and down buttons, and I'm fairly proud of that. That allows me to get the time slip at the end of the run. Speaking of buttons, we also have two buttons on the steering wheel. The button on the right runs the trans brake. That allows us to spool up and launch the car. The button on the left is our bunt button, but it can also be used for a variety of functions. And in this case, we're using the bump button to control the line lock to do a burnout, and then going down the racetrack, the bump button can also increase the boost level. We'll also see a 2-speed shifter. That's connected to our Turbo 400 transmission. We're also using a Haltech boost control solenoid that's been repurposed to run the shifter. We also have an emergency shutoff switch. In case anything gets out of control, we can smack that button, shut everything down. And lastly, we have the pull cable for our fire suppression system.
So behind the transmission, what have you got there?
Yeah, so past the transmission, we've got a PST carbon drive shaft. We have an battle-ready 8.8 kit from Tin Soldiers Race Cars. We've got aftermarket torque boxes from Marty Marilette, which are awesome pieces. We have anti-roll bar from TRZ Motorsports, and we also have double adjustable shocks from AFCO. The battle-ready 8.8 kit from Tin Soldiers has adjustable pickup points for the control arms, and the torque boxes from Marty Marilette also offer adjustability to be able to change your bar angles for various track surfaces and various tires.
So the car's on a Haltech Nexus R5. Tell me about it. You're the man to go to for this.
Yeah, so when I started this project, I knew it was going to be on a Nexus R5. That's our flagship ECU, and it runs the entire car. It shifts the transmission, runs the engine, runs the data logging, runs the power management, runs the methanol fuel injection, the ignition, all the sensors.
Boost control.
Boost control, we use a CO2 boost control. We've got EGTs, we've got an alcohol NTK wideband.
So I heard there's a nickname and a funny story behind it about this car. What can you tell me about it?
The story goes back to when we first started building the car. We had brought the car in and had cut the front end of it off. We had pulled the windshield out. We were starting to work on the chassis. And this little toy dinosaur, about 2 inches tall, little plastic dinosaur showed up, and it hung out on the cowl, it hung out on the roof of the car. It pretty much hung out through the entire build. We basically, it became the mascot for the project, and this little toy Tyrannosaurus Rex. Oh, look, I'm not a dinosaur expert. I don't know if it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex or a Velociraptor or whatever it is, but to me, it's a T-Rex. So when I was coming up for a nickname for the car, I've never nicknamed a car before, but when we were coming up with a nickname for the car, I wanted to incorporate the fact that this little dinosaur mascot was part of the build, and also the LT engine, and so LT Rex kind of stuck.
Yeah, and it fits. All right, so it's a really cool build, man, and I've heard you've been super successful in a relatively short amount of time. Tell me about that.
Yeah, man, we've had the car together for about 5 months. We took it testing first in April, and matter of fact, the first test pass off the trailer was a PB for me across the time slip. It went 484 on the first lap off the trailer.
So
I'd planned to abort that pass at half track, but man, the thing was running good, felt good. I just stayed in it. I ended up going 4s on the first lap.
yeah, so 480s, first hit off a brand new car off the trailer.
Yeah, that's right. It pretty much exceeded expectations on the first lap.
Jeez, man. What about since then? You know, have you entered any races since then, or has it just been testing?
Yeah, we've been fortunate enough to win 5 races in the small tire class within the 5 months. And look, credit to the guys from Conley Racing for helping set up the chassis and make this thing go straight.
That's awesome, man. Now, in terms of future plans, future upgrades, what have you got?
Yeah, so we've been working with the guys over at Brian Tooley Racing. We've been working on some different camshaft designs. I've also worked with guys at Garrett on a large turbocharger. We may look at doing some ported cylinder heads or some aftermarket heads in the future. And we've been working with the guys over at Hughes Performance, so with Pete Nichols on some different converter stators.
To dial in converter.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so is it just to continue developing the Gen 5 platform or just a personal challenge?
Well, both. Look, we want to continue to go quicker and faster. We want to see how much power we can continue to make out of this motor and obviously make the car work better.
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you bringing it by. I mean, we both work here. I know you, I know the car, but I just felt it was super cool to share, and I'm glad you could do that.
Yeah, you're welcome, man.
Thanks.